What's going on, YouTube? Well, today is 2025, and we did a video about talking about buying retro games and everything going into 2025, and this is kind of, want to say, maybe a buying guide slash tips, guidance, whatever. So take this all with a grain of salt. Obviously, I'm not the best reseller, the best buyer in the world, and I have a collecting addiction problem, so... That being said, let's jump right into it. So this is just going to be a basic video talking about, like I said, hints, tips, and everything that goes on. And before we get into any of those, we're going to check out a little handy-dandy thing that I love to use that's going to help you with prices. So we'll talk a little bit later about one of the tips that involves studying, and this is a great website that I use, pricecharting.com. So if you're not familiar with this website, you can put in any game that you're looking for. So this is helpful if you're at garage sales, flea markets, Goodwill, anything like that, even shopping online, to make sure that you're getting the best price. So, for example, you go here, let's put in Super Mario World. That's always a good go-to. So we have the options for the different Super Mario Worlds. Obviously, Super Mario World 3D is right here. It tells you the loose price, the complete box price. So buying a disc of Super Mario World should average around $9. Buying it complete is around $10. Obviously, this is a cheaper option. We go down here, we're going to find the Super Nintendo version. And then you can see here in the middle, I don't know why I'm pointing because you can't see that part, but it'll tell you right here which console it's for. So we got Super Mario World for Super Nintendo, and I'll show you just one little quick cool thing about this. So you pull this up, you're looking for just a cart, so we're going to look for the loose price. So we're looking right here, about $15.50 is the average price going for Super Mario World. So we look down here, we're going to look at the loose sold pricing, and you can just see right here, eBay, what it's been selling for on eBay, the average price. So we got a couple for $11, $10.50, a couple for $22.96 even. But you can see on this little trend too, it'll show you over the years, especially in the last year, what the price of the game has done, and you can kind of follow along and see, do you think the game's going to go up more or anything like that. So I like to use this website just for kind of a little fun side thing too. Like sometimes you can get lost and just kind of see what the prices have been. But that's just kind of what I want to get right off the bat talking to you guys. Now, like I said, that's a great website to use if you're at a garage sale, flea market, or anything like that, and you see a game and you're questioning whether or not it's actually worth it. Now, the intro to this video is already over with, but I wanted to just talk a little bit about where retro games are now. They are located everywhere. With the internet the way it is, and social media, and just the reseller culture just taking off, you can find retro games, video games almost anywhere nowadays. Mercari, eBay, Facebook Marketplace, obviously the good old-fashioned Goodwill, flea markets, thrift stores, and stuff like that. So the retro games are worth money. You can obviously find great deals in certain areas, and to say that all the good deals are completely dried up is a mistake. I saw a couple of weeks ago somebody in a local city that was too far away from me had a lot of Super Nintendo games for $100. I think it was 20 games in there, and there was a Pocky and Rocky in there, which, as a lot of you guys know, is worth probably about that much alone. And so they're out there. It's just whatever. So what I got here coming up too for number 2 is the biggest mistake collectors and investors make: buying whatever retro they can find, selling on the wrong platforms, or not studying the best methods to sell. So let's see, let's jump right into this. So my biggest mistake when I started retro game collecting was I first started off sticking with the new Nintendo, and soon after that I started picking up consoles. I got an N64, Super Nintendo, and all the other consoles. And then I found that was a big mistake in my place, because then I justified grabbing whatever retro games I saw and spending a bunch of money on games that I wasn't going to ever play or I didn't even really want. So I think one of the biggest mistakes that I recommend to people is, if you're going to go into collecting, you need to have an end goal kind of in mind. Or just, if you're doing it for fun, make sure that you're buying games that you're connected with, that you're going to enjoy, because otherwise, yeah, you're going to end up just spending a vast amount of money on filler titles that you're not going to like, and they're just going to sit on a shelf. You're going to basically turn into a shelf collector, and if that's your goal, then so be it. But like I said, on selling on the wrong platform, so if you're going to, a lot of people, this is common, will buy a lot of games and resell some of the games to further purchase more games for their collection, that games that they would actually enjoy. So I did this method a lot. I would buy a lot of games for a decent price, sell most of the games I didn't want, and keep the ones I did to kind of either break even or in the end sometimes even profit a little bit. Now, like I showed you guys earlier, price charting is a good method for this to make sure that you're getting a decent price on something. So if you are planning on reselling it, you can get another general idea of what you should probably sell it for. I always personally, some people probably won't agree with this, but I usually always go for price charting market price. And sometimes even lower than that if I had to ship it, so that way somebody gets a better deal. But that's just it. Is lots of those trends too. Sometimes you could sell too soon or too late. Excuse me. Had trends on the price charting. So we got number 3 here. I put down the difference between a professional and an amateur reseller. So a lot of times you might want to buy games from a reseller. Now you'll see them on Encore, whatnot, and stuff like that. And it's easy to detect right off the bat which one's a professional reseller and which one is an amateur one. So the professional one might not be a gamer themselves, but they've done this study method where they've checked prices and they know beforehand exactly what they want to sell it for, and a lot of times that is what they're going to sell it for. Like I said, they will study the prices, they will know exactly what kind of game they got, and they will, this is when they're a professional, that is really their job kind of, so that's what they're going to do. Now on the other hand, the amateur just found it somewhere, heard it was worth money, and really might not know the value of it. So sometimes those are the best people to buy from. Now I don't necessarily condone ripping people off. I personally, I don't really enjoy hearing that. Like when people tell me that they bought Earthbound for $5 and they ripped some little old lady off, it's whatever. As long as both parties are happy, I guess, and you're happy, that's whatever. But me personally, excuse me, I'd feel terrible, but that's just the way I am. But sometimes too, when you're buying from resellers and professional resellers, they know the game, and a lot of times amateurs you're more likely to get good deals from. Like I said, those will be the people that are popping up on Marketplace. Sometimes on other markets like Mercari and eBay, you can sometimes get lucky and just find somebody that dug out a box of their old video games and they're just selling them for a cheap price because they don't know what it's worth. They just want to get out of there. But then it also goes in the other boat too. And we'll get going into that here to the topic number 4 that I put on here. The biggest issue is finding games at garage sales and flea markets. The seller automatically assumes because it's Mario, Atari, or anything like that, that it's worth a bunch of money, and they won't waste time negotiating with you. Now, I've watched Game Chasers for years, and they'll find this out a lot sometimes when you go to a flea market or a garage sale, and just because it says Mario on it, they automatically assume that it's a huge price, or since Atari is super old, they assume that the Atari game itself, or Atari system, is worth hundreds of dollars. I ran into this issue a few weeks ago when I went to a thrift store, and somebody actually had a complete in-box Atari. I think it was just your regular basic 2600, used obviously, but it had the box and stuff like that, and they were asking $300 for it. And I was just kind of talking with one of the persons on there, and like, oh yeah, well it's from the 70s or 80s or something like that, so it's got to be worth a lot of money. And then of course they were selling actually Super Nintendo games for like $5 a piece, which were worth probably just as much as that console. And I kind of laughed at that, but yeah, they automatically assume that because it's a well-known thing that there's going to be more. So if you run into those people, don't even waste time negotiating with them. I had somebody on Facebook Marketplace not too long ago that was going through stuff and randomly found 2 Nintendo controllers and Super Mario Bros. 3. And when I asked, what kind of price they were looking at, she told me she was looking for $40 for Super Mario Bros. And about $25 a controller. And I said, how about $40 for the whole lot? And all she said was no. And that was it. I stopped right there because I was like, well, I don't. And then guess what, guys? It's still a marketplace. It's still not sold. she still hasn't come down in price. She just probably assumes that because it's Super Mario Bros. 3 and it's Nintendo, it's immediately super expensive. So I think the biggest kind of guidance with this one is know your audience, or know the person you're trying to buy from. Now, negotiating in certain areas is obviously expected, so people will price accordingly, but you should automatically be able to tell whether or not somebody's going to be able to drop prices or with you, or even talk to you about it. Because I mean, a lot of times too, you don't want to waste time on people like that. Unless it's a game that you really want and you're willing to pay the extra dollar, by all means go for it. But a lot of times when it comes to collecting and hobbyists and stuff like this, we want to get the best bang for our buck, so that way we have more money to buy more games. And lastly, like I said, we talked about this with price charting. Number 5 is study, and sometimes get lucky. Figure out what you want to collect for is a huge thing. Which consoles, and when you are bored, research good prices and save items to your watch list. So figure out what consoles you want to collect for first. And then, like I said, I used to go on Mercari and some of these for sale sites, and I would search for games that I wanted. And even if they were overpriced, I would favorite them or follow them just to see if down the road that they would drop off in price if nobody paid for them. But a lot of times too, one key thing that I found later on after I sold most of my collection that was all filler crap, I created a watch list / wish list. I wrote it down on my phone, so that way if I ever went to a gaming store or anything like that, and I kind of got like a kid in a candy store, like, oh my god, you know, there's games everywhere. I had a reference guide to what I was actually looking for, instead of just going like crazy and FOMO or compulsive and buying just a few things that I didn't even want. Because I've done that before too, where I'll find a game that I have not seen in a long time or don't think I'll ever see again, and purchase it, and just sits on a shelf. The best method to get good prices and sometimes get lucky is just to follow stuff. I think on Mercari and some other ones, you can save your searches and it will notify you anytime something new pops up. So if you are, say, looking for a copy of Breath of Fire 3 on PlayStation 1 and you save that search, it'll notify you when anybody starts to sell it. So that way you'll be the first person to know, hey, somebody just started selling Breath of Fire 3 on Mercari. Go check it out, and if you're lucky, maybe the price is low enough that you can just buy right off the bat or haggle with them. So with that being said, guys, I gave you a few tips here. Like I said, I'm not an expert by all means, and it was just kind of all over the place, but buying retro games in 2025 is probably going to be about just the same as 2024. Now we got a lot of predictions on whether this bubble's finally going to pop or not for pricing. I honestly don't think we're ever going to go back to the cheap prices we once had. But I'm hoping at some point it just levels out and stays, and that way, you know, the new normal will be the new low price for in case in the future it ever does dramatically go up. But you know, who knows? Because we're right around the corner, you know, with emulation and all this digital era stuff. Some of that stuff really affects gaming, and people automatically will assume that because stuff goes digital, physical stuff's gonna raise in price. But I don't know. I've sometimes seen it kind of go the opposite way. Like I was trying to think of when the N64 expansion pack started coming out on the Nintendo Switch, and some of those other ones, and the Super Nintendo Mini started coming out. I noticed some of those physical games seemed to dip off in price because people were easily able to get it on something else, so they stopped buying it as much, which caused the price to actually go down because there was no high demand for it, because people were able to play it somewhere else. Like me personally, I was playing Earthbound on my Super Nintendo Mini, so I have no real purpose anymore to want to purchase it physically to have when I can just play it on that. But it all comes down to what person's opinions, or obviously what their goals are. So yeah, there will be a Super Nintendo collector out there that would have Earthbound, and would I personally like to have the physical version of Earthbound? Yes, but I am unwilling to pay that much for it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know if any of these tips helped you. I don't even know if they're really necessarily tips. It's just kind of what my mind was putting together, and how I used to kind of work my magic when I was collecting before, and trying to get the best prices possible. So make sure you comment below if this helped you at all, or if you got some tips for other retro collectors coming and going in 2025. let them know in the comments below. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay retro, my friends, and we'll see you in the next video.